Anthony was sitting at his computer, staring at the monitor. He couldn't believe he'd received an email from his wife because he had buried her 2 weeks ago. How could she send a letter now? Or was it some kind of silly joke from hackers? Maybe she had been hacked and it was some kind of virus mailing. Except for the subject line of the email didn't look like a virus at all. It said, "A letter from heaven to the dearest person in the world." Anthony stood up, went to the window, and lit a cigarette. He had been trying to quit smoking for a long time. He even succeeded sometimes. But then he failed again. He lit a cigarette when he found out his wife had a few weeks to live, or a month at most. He also smoked when he got a phone call informing him that she had passed away. He smoked when he threw a handful of soil on the lid of the coffin and wanted to lie on it himself instead of the soil, to take its place, to swap places with it. And now he did it again. The man was afraid to open and read the letter. Panic and fear shook him, crawling deep beneath his skin. He shuddered to think what she might have written there. Did she say goodbye? Or asked him to be happy without her? Except he would never be happy again, and he would never be able to love anyone as much as he loved her, as he still loves her. Pulling himself together and putting out a cigarette, the smoke of which was eating away at his lung tissue and penetrating the skin with a toxic poison, Anthony walked to the computer and opened the letter. As soon as he read the first few lines, tears appeared in his eyes. "Hello, my love. If you're reading this letter, it means I'm gone. It means that I wasn't able to cancel the sending of this letter. I'm sorry I couldn't win this battle with the disease. I was sure I could do it. I could handle it. But I couldn't. That's the way it is. Please don't be mad with me. Alright, well, you'll have another reason to be mad at me. I want to repent to you. I want to tell you what I was afraid to reveal before. As it happens, Anthony, I had another man before you. He was much older than me, and I was just a silly, naive girl back then. He drove me crazy and made me believe that age is nothing when it comes to love. He plucked the flower of my virginity, but soon disappeared from my life. He disappeared without any explanation, leaving me no chance to look into his eyes. I suffered for a long time and couldn't bear the pain. I was going crazy. A month later, I found out I was pregnant. It was too late to have an abortion. The doctor said it could end badly for me. I was afraid to tell my parents about it. I was sure they wouldn't understand me, so I kept my situation a secret. I tried to handle everything on my own. When I gave birth, I gave up on the baby right away. I thought it would be easier, that one day I would be able to accept the fact that I did this. But it didn't get any easier. This burden has become my never-ending pain. Maybe that's why fate pushed me. It pushed me by not being able to have a child with you. I managed to find out which orphanage the girl was taken to. Her name is Stephanie. She's 7 years old now. Remember when I tried to convince you to adopt a baby, but you said no right away? I wanted to adopt her. I wanted to redeem myself, but I was afraid. I was so afraid to tell you the truth. And now, in the last hours of my life, I realize I should have done it. There is only one secret between us that I can never forgive myself for. And I suppose you won't be able to forgive me either. If you love me, if my story hasn't ruined the feelings you have for me, I beg you, take care of her. Stephanie is a very good girl, but she is very lonely. It breaks my heart to know that I'm the one who doomed her to this life. This child is innocent. This pure soul was not guilty of her mother not being able to cope with everything. Anthony, I love you. I love you so much. And I take that love with me to the other world. I am no longer in this world, and I will never be able to hug or kiss you again. But I will look after you and Stephanie and keep you safe. I'm sorry for telling you the whole truth only now. I just couldn't take that secret to my grave. If there's even the slightest chance of you taking care of my girl, I have to try. Forever yours, Ada. Anthony didn't notice his hands clenching into fists. He clenched his teeth and sat staring at the screen. Bitter tears burned his eyes. The throbbing pain in his temples was hammering nails into his head. It felt like his head was about to explode, to shatter into molecules. Why hadn't Ada told him everything when she was alive? How dare she keep it a secret? How could she do this to him? The man could not believe that the things written in the letter were true. He copied the address of the orphanage his wife had given after her confession, and found that this orphanage was not that far away. Perhaps it was just scammers who wanted to benefit from his situation. Anthony had no idea what to do about this letter. On the one hand, He wanted to delete it and put it out of his mind, to forget it like the worst nightmare. But on the other hand, he could not abandon that child. It was the daughter of the woman he loved, the only part of Ada left to him. He wishes that he could help the child, maybe not adopt her, but at least visit her. He felt guilty for not letting his wife adopt her. His thoughts jumbled. Anthony didn't remember when he fell asleep. But the next day after work, he drove to the orphanage to see Stephanie. Did she look like Ada? "Hello, what is the purpose of your meeting with Stephanie?" the educator asked, wrinkling her nose. "She is the daughter of my dead wife. I've only just found out the truth. And if there's anything I can do to help the child..." "We have many programs to help children. You can donate to the orphanage. You can also get custody of the child or adopt her." The woman began to put pressure on him. Anthony didn't even have time to open his mouth to answer her. He had not expected such pressure. He needed to at least see the girl, to talk to her. Maybe they wouldn't be able to get along. He didn't know how to communicate with children, so he had no idea if he would ever be able to find common ground with her. "I can't adopt her because I'm a widower. My wife died 2 weeks ago, and she asked me to look after the girl. I'm not even sure if the letter was truthful." Mrs. Ada Walton often came to visit Stephanie, but honestly, we didn't know she was her mother. We wouldn't let her communicate with Stephanie if we knew the truth. How is it possible to do that? Give up the baby and then go and visit her. It's silly. "Everyone has their own reasons for doing that," Anthony answered rudely. "Sorry, we should not speak ill of the deceased, so I'm not going to argue. But children are not toys. Every time, they hope they will be taken into a family, and now it's already possible to adopt children, even for those who don't have a wife or husband." Anthony didn't say anything else. He walked over to the glass window where the children were running around. Without words, he knew where Stephanie was because she was a copy of Ada. How could the orphanage staff not notice that? She was as pretty as her mother, with a snub nose and blonde hair. His heart clenched in his chest. Tears welled up in his eyes again. Anthony remembered how many times he had imagined children he and Ada would have and what they would look like. He had dreamed of a real family, and now he looked at the girl and understood that he could become a family for her. He didn't dare talk to her, but just looked at her and left. For several days, the man was not himself. He went to the cemetery and talked to his wife, though the conversation was really just a monologue. "I don't know what to do. I just don't know. If you told me sooner, we would adopt her. What should I do now? Tell me. Give me a sign." Tears streamed down his cheeks. He had discussed the situation with his mother, but she told him that he could not take a child from the orphanage. "Now you feel sad for Ada and are ready to take her child. But what will happen in 2 years? In 3 years? You will meet another woman, fall in love with her, and Ada's daughter will be a burden to you." These words put him even deeper into his thoughts. Anthony expected to find support from his mother, but instead he got more doubts and more worries. His head continued to ache. The blood kept throbbing in his temples. So the man decided to have a meeting with the girl. Perhaps a meeting would help him understand what to do. He was very nervous, but as soon as the man met the girl, he felt warm inside. The answer came by itself. She was his daughter, even though he wasn't her biological father. Stephanie behaved very modestly. She was a well-mannered and a little introverted girl, but she answered Anthony's questions. She told him that she dreamed of having a mom and dad. "But no one will ever adopt me. All the nannies say that if I don't sing and dance for my new parents, they won't take me. Edward sang well, and they chose him. Attention must be earned, but I don't know how to do that." Anthony's heart squeezed. What were they teaching kids there? To serve, to be chosen and adopted, and then to obey all their commands and have no temper? No, he could give the girl a proper education. The next weekend, he came and took Stephanie for a walk. He had to provide a lot of papers to do it, but it was worth it. For the first time in a month since his wife's death, he felt alive, like he took a breath of fresh air. Stephanie was happy to be out of the orphanage. She smiled and modestly declined the ice cream, saying it wasn't necessary to spend money on her at all. The attention the man gave her was enough. A month later, the man decided to get custody of the girl. His mother, though she was against it, began to help him over time. She became very attached to Stephanie with all her heart. Stephanie had a natural charm and could not leave anyone indifferent. A year and a half passed. Anthony decided that he had to move on, that the child needed a mother. They had a wonderful relationship with Stephanie. Sometimes she even called him Dad. The man started dating his coworker. He felt so good and comfortable by her side, and she accepted the fact that Anthony was raising his dead wife's daughter. She said it was a truly courageous thing to do. Marian quickly found common ground with Stephanie, and when Anthony invited her to live with them, she said yes. Look, maybe I'm moving too fast, but if you and I are going to get married, shouldn't we adopt Stephanie? She could be our daughter, not just in words, but also in papers. Anthony smiled and hugged Marian. He was glad that fate rewarded him by sending him such an understanding, beautiful woman. When they were married and all the papers were issued, the girl began to call them Mom and Dad.